I'd like to thank the Coca-Cola Company for their sponsorship of this live streaming activity across a number of the plenary sessions. Might seem a bit strange for those that are just joining. I'm Paul Campbell and I work for PepsiCo, and I'm thanking the Coca-Cola Company. That might find a bit strange. I think you can take from that the real positive that this diversity and inclusivity agenda is something that is agnostic to organizations. Even the fiercest competitors need to work together on this agenda. And we need to work to change the system, not just change our own organizations. And therefore, you know, people like ourselves working together and other competitive companies, you know, we need to see that as being a strength and something that we work towards, particularly in areas like this. As we kick this next session off, if we can move on, I wanted to welcome Joao Cilia to lead the panel. Joao is the General Manager of Wells, which is the major health and beauty and optics chain across Portugal with just less than 300 stores and over 2,000 employees. And he leads the management team, defining the strategy and the daily operational management of the business. Very passionate about business development and transformation, and always looking for ways that can both push the team but grow the organization, and really looking at disruptive ways of challenging the norm and how businesses can drive sustainable growth. And I think particularly when you look at an organization that has a lot of frontline employees, given that it's in the retail space, you know, the last 18 months have been particularly tough when people who operate in that environment have not been working from home. They've been working really at the coal face, you know, interfacing with you know, potential risk in the environment, whereas, you know, many of us have been somewhat protected in this home environment. And you know, these people working in both our plants, for those of us in the manufacturing industry, but also in retail, they're the real heroes, and they've kept our factories running and kept the retail space turning over. And really, this panel discussion is going to talk about people's experiences in managing that, the learnings, and the things that it's taught us about how we need to change and adapt as a consequence of the last 18 months, and driving a much more equitable workplace, because it's clear that what COVID has taught us is that it's had a bigger impact on female people in the workplace than it has on male. So there's massive learnings. So to that end, if I can hand over to Joao, who will lead the panel now.
Hi everyone. I think you can all see me, right? Good. Hi everyone, and thank you all for being here. We're going to have a discussion on how COVID affected businesses, and especially how differently it affected female and male frontline workers. You know that everyone knows that COVID poses a lot of challenges for all business in different sectors. Companies had to adapt to drastic shifts in demand, also in supply sometimes, while at the same time, especially in retail and plants and logistics, there was a lot of concern about employees and customer safety. So a lot of new measures had to be put in place in order to protect employees and customers during this period. Such impact was also significant for people. People had to be flexible to work sometimes outside home with schools and other services closed. And especially that was significant for females also, because they need to work abroad, especially in the front line. They need to leave home, normally with kids, babies in the house. So it was a structural change in the way they used to do their work-life balance. And so we're here today to discuss how this affected differently between men and women, and how we can address and what big changes and structural changes came with this, and how we can address them in the future. And for that, I have a great panel here with 4 frontline managers who had the experience to go through such challenges in the last 18 months. And they will give us a little bit of a view on how they cope with that, and how they are planning to, what they are planning to change in the future in order to reduce the effect that the COVID brought between the two different genders. So I'll probably let them introduce themselves. I'll start with Caroline. Caroline, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Caroline Rowan. I'm Head of Retail Operations for Musgrave. We are a retail, wholesale and food service business that operates across Ireland, Northern Ireland and Spain. And I look after the company-owned element of our business within Northern Ireland. So it's lovely to be here this afternoon and I look forward to taking part.
Thank you, Caroline. Aileen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Aileen. I'm working as a QA and environment leader in Coca-Cola İçecek, CCI, which is the 6th biggest bottler in Coca-Cola world, and happy to be here.
Thanks a lot. Julia.
Hi, everyone. It's a big honor to be here with you today. My name is Julia Semenchenko. I am leading around 1,000 people manufacturing facility producing Pampers brand in Warsaw, Poland. I'm also mom of 7 years old and 4 years old who were 5.5 and 2.5 during the pandemic. So I have few thoughts to share with you today, both on the personal and the professional side. Really happy to be here.
Thanks a lot. Liza, you're the last one to introduce.
Okay, yeah, I'm also really happy to be here. I'm Lisa Kears. I'm the plant manager in one of our CHEP service centres in Bristol in the UK. So we are a pallet or a equipment handling pooling company headquartered in Australia. Yeah, really happy to be here.
Thanks all of you to be here. Julia, I'll start with you, and first question a little bit to frame how the COVID affected frontline workers in your experience in your company, and how do you felt it and your team felt this last 18 months?
Yeah, I mean, being on the front line, you can imagine that the impact was major. We needed to totally rethink the way how we operate and basically do it overnight. In manufacturing, before the global pandemic, 100% of the workforce was expected and needed to physically be on the ground. And the next days, with the school closure and the lockdown that happened more or less overnight in the majority of the countries in Europe, we faced a challenge on how do you organize the work when people cannot be physically always present at work. So pandemic showed that the gender challenge is still everywhere, because the moment lockdown happened, the tendency was that female is taking care of the childcare, right? So the schooling had to be organized by my female team members, while a lot of my colleagues just kept coming to work as they did before. So we had to change our habits pretty much 100%. I had to get my team together and literally talk and train leaders how to handle and what to expect from the female leaders. How do we enable joining shift handovers happening at 6 a.m. and how we enable female leaders join remotely, which was kind of unthinkable before. It was simply not possible. How leaders should expect women connect remotely and take some time off to enable the childcare and enable the families still going and running. How people should become comfortable seeing life and kids and family members popping up on the screens during the conferences, and I mean this had to become part of reality.
Good. Aileen, a quick question also on you regarding how COVID impacted you and your team, and especially highlight a little bit what structural changes did the COVID brought and that will remain and need to be addressed.
Actually, I've been a working mother and wife in all my 27 years in supply chain. However, COVID-19 hit me as much as it hit less experienced working women. As we all know, gender inequality puts a great deal of burden on women. Besides earning money, working, We are also responsible for household courses, childcare, kinship relationships, visits, preparation for visits. That's why working woman needs more support from husbands, schooling, tutors, nannies, cleaners, and even grandparents. But when the pandemic started, all support functions evaporated. So on the frontline workers, the production continued and they had to go to their works. They didn't stay at home with all additional tasks. Without support functions, I really felt absolutely a huge pressure on me. Even though my son was a freshman at university and he could study his online courses by himself, it didn't take the pressure from me. As a long-time QA professional, I tend to control every detail and ensure that everything is going in an order. What I learned from the pandemic is that I cannot control everything in a way that I want. So I had to teach myself to lower my stress level, and also I delegated some of my household courses to my husband and son, which doesn't make them happy. But right now it is how we continue today. Also, we have a CCI Women's Network in all our countries, which offers an additional support to other targets. Our HR department did many activities regarding offers to support, but I believe employee source groups like CCI Women's Network have a crucial importance on a crisis like this pandemic. As an article I read was pointing out 1 in 4 women are considering downshifting their careers and leaving the workforce altogether in the COVID-19 pandemic. So this pandemic had a big negative impact on our progress, especially women in supply chain. So now I believe it's time to accelerate our effort on gender equality. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa, did you also experience the same, and how did you dealt with it, and what was your personal experience during the last 18 months?
Sure. So my own experience is slightly different because I'm in a plant here with, there was 154 of us in the plant, but only 2 women. And I think it's really interesting to hear some of the other panelists and some of the other speakers today, because our experience is very different. You know, so we have effectively 150 shifts a day, and we only actually used 46 shifts of childcare allowance through the whole pandemic. So, you know, which is such, you know, will be a massive difference to, you know, a lot of people's experiences. So I think for me, the things that I sort of learned during I feel like I've learned since, you know, the furore of the pandemic have been much more subtle. And I think, you know, it's largely about how we have changed and how we deal with people in the plant. And I think when the pandemic really took hold, I think everyone got a better sense of where their own well-being lay, if you like, and things like home and family just became absolutely central to how everyone functioned and how the business then functioned. And when we sort of experienced this massive shift in balance at home, and we were experiencing it en masse, you know, we're all experiencing it together, it just required some sort of response. And I think there's 2 things really that happened here. The number one, the first thing, that sort of traditional view of being able to separate the 2, being able to separate work and home, just completely evaporated. It was just 100% irrelevant. You know, it just didn't work for today's society, if you like. And what it also did was sped up that conversation about self-care and mental health in a way that I don't think we could have imagined. You know, I don't think that conversation was where it is today 2 years ago, pre-pandemic. And so as a result of that, I think what I've learned is the softer skills, you know, the sort of just the sort of human, emotional, and without being stereotypical, slightly more female skills have really become massively important. They're not just nice to have now, they have been absolutely critical. They've been vital in keeping people at work, keeping factories running, keeping supply chains operating, and even to some extent, keeping families operating, so those skills have been really important to us. And if I talk about our plant in particular, we took what sounds like a really well-trodden path through our sort of emotional response to the pandemic, in that it started in sort of anxiety and in some cases just raw fear of what was going to happen, and kind of spiraled into, or quickly came into, something approaching relief, that we were in work, we had credible roles to fulfill, and we were maintaining some sort of sense of normality. And we really saw that journey through the plant and through the people in it. And I think because of that, the way I can see, because I'm aware of that now, I think I can see the head shift in leadership in the plant. And whereas before, I think a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic, domestic issues were very sort of consistent, fair, and policy driven. And looking back, that feels really cold now. And I think now as we sort of move on, it's much more the way the people in the plant are managed now just feels more considered, flexible, and just a bit more supportive. So I think those sort of softer skills are really something, that I learned was a requirement, and fortunately we're stepping up to. And I think it's something that, we can take as a benefit from the pandemic.
Good. Caroline, you work in retail, so you had to deal with the COVID, facing a lot of clients, and your team had to face the clients, also nervous clients sometimes. How different it is to be in retail to this experience we had just right here, and how was your experience on that?
Yeah, so obviously our experience, we had lots of similarities in terms of, even from my own personal experience, I have 2 young children, so I had to balance the homeschooling and the working. But I think the complication as well, as you touched on there, was the fact that we were completely customer facing still throughout. So we had operational requirements, but also social requirements. And a couple of points, I suppose, that stick with me was really colleague safety, but also customer safety was key. And we had a lot of COVID anxiety, and probably more so with our female employees, because they tended to be the caregivers. So whether it be children or perhaps looking after relatives and things like that. So, we moved very quickly to put in social distancing measures, to put in limiting the number of customers and things in stores. So we had the operational element of actually how do we keep everybody safe, which probably played on a lot of kind of maternal factors within the leadership when we were doing that. But we also then had the childcare complications, as we discussed. I mean, 53% of employees in retail work part-time, and majority of those being female, and really that is, a lot of it is around obviously childcare. So we had to work to support those colleagues, and as people touched on, they were under huge pressure, thinking, financially overnight, do they have an income, how does that work, and then how did we rebalance our operation around that? So we had to support all of those colleagues. Our volume increased exponentially, so we did Christmas volumes overnight, and as anyone who works in retail knows, we spent months planning for Christmas, and literally we were doing more than Christmas volumes overnight. So it really showed us how agile we could be, and how we needed to adapt to those. As Lisa mentioned there, well-being was really important as well, and we really rolled out the likes of our grocery aid and support for colleagues, because we really were conscious of their mental health throughout this. And at times we were dealing with fairly irrational customers who didn't understand what was happening. We didn't understand what was happening, so we had to navigate them through that journey as well. And one of the key things for me that really sticks out is the social responsibility that we had in retail. It became really apparent very quickly that in some instances, people's trip to the shop to buy bread and milk was the only interaction that they had with anyone. So as soon as the stay-at-home guidance came in, so there was actually a lot of pressure on our colleagues as they realised, especially elderly customers, that really we were the only person that they had to support them. So there was that kind of social pressure as well. Practically, I don't think retail was probably fully realised as key workers at the start, and I certainly experienced that. So we talked about people's insecurities. My husband is self-employed, we didn't know would he be able to work at the start. So you're trying to balance work life, financial, and I wasn't recognized as a key worker at my children's school. And so I was trying to explain to them, we were frontline, what we were doing, and they wouldn't take my kids to school. So there was lots of things in terms of, we had to then really work with the government in terms of policy formation and, and how we actually really supported that. So as Julia said, we had lots of kids on Zoom calls, and I think that is a real step forward in terms of driving the gender, and inclusion message going forward, because I know before, people knew I had children, but they weren't talked about. Now, if I'm on a call at 5:05, my children will be in the middle of it, and that has become accepted. And actually, there's a lot more kind of interaction between each other, and I think that can only help to move, the agenda forward. I think and I think Lisa, you probably touched on this as well, the flexibility and how we changed our operation overnight. We have to be agile and innovative going forward, and we have to trust our colleagues that actually they know what they're doing, and we can make decisions much quicker. So they would be two key learnings that we have certainly taken from it, is the people on the front line know what we need to do. So let them get on with it, and let's be quicker in our response.
Good. You've talked already a little bit about how COVID impacted differently men and women, and so the differences between both. I would like to focus a little bit now on the general impact on gender equality. So, and I will pass to Julia. First of all, what equality means to you, and in your experience, how difficult it is to achieve equality in your line of business?
Great question, thank you. I have encountered the gender equality topic right from my early days. From the junior high school to the university, I was just one of few female engineers among a large group of boys or guys. I was the first female process engineer hired at P&G at that point of time. So from my early days, I had to understand what is the point of difference I can bring as a female, the first female in that team, and what I can drive, and how can I help other girls who are coming behind me? How can I help them to make a difference? Actually, my point of gender equality is very similar and very close to how P&G in total looks at the gender equality. We have our goal is that we aspire to build a better world, and a world that is free of biases. And a lot of our brands and a lot of work that we are doing is actually supporting that big message. How we are doing it? We are creating the inclusive environment for inside of the P&G, so kind of role modeling and making sure that we ourselves create a gender equal environment. We are leveraging the corporate voice and media and advertisement and the power of the brands to bring it out into the society, to bring the message that gender equality is actually good and is making business stronger. And we also we're focusing on removing the barriers for education for girls, because we want to make sure that the growing female power that we are bringing to business has no issue to access the right level of education. My drive is always, how can I touch an organization and how can I lead a better and more inclusive workplace? I am really proud to say that in the last 2.5 years, my plant, the plant I'm leading, has doubled female representation at the leadership level. We came from shy 25% to a very strong 48%, which is like 50% of females are part of my leadership team. I have a great role models inside of my company. Just yesterday, there were 2 CEOs of a beauty care business and baby care business. Alex Keith and Fama Francisco have been announced as in the list of the most powerful women in the US. And Fama personally has inspired me a lot. She's the CEO of a huge business, of the whole Pampers business globally, and she's a female. General manager of baby care business in Europe, Rania, she's also a female. 2 plant managers from Europe, out of 5 are also female. So we have these pockets of success. We have a good models to build on, and this makes me very inspired to push the boundaries and to continue the journey.
Great inspiration. Thanks a lot, Julia. Caroline, you work in a different line of business. What are the main barriers you still feel retail poses to gender equality? And what do you think would be the key topics that need to be addressed?
Yeah, so I think actually earlier on, for anyone that was on the session, Andrea possibly gave us some of the insights, and I kind of took notes as I was going through. And interestingly, I would say my view is it's fairly similar, which probably calls out that there is a bit for the industry to do going forward. So I think specifically within retail, women are overrepresented probably in frontline positions, but then probably underrepresented in senior manager roles. I think less than 10% of CEOs within retail are female, with almost 60% of the total workforce being, female. So straight away calls out that there is a huge opportunity within that. And obviously, it's probably fair to say that women are the influential decision maker in a lot of retail purchases. So we probably don't necessarily, we're probably not fully customer centric in our approach with our current gender balance. I think there's a couple of key things we can do. And Andrea talked about, obviously, there is a need for a culture shift. That takes time. We need to see more strong leaders and role models within the industry. But more importantly, they need to demonstrate, or we need to demonstrate, how agile working, how flexibility, and how different leadership styles can bring that agenda forward. I think it's really important to call out as well, there is no shortage of women in retail, especially at on shop floor, and also within the likes of graduate schemes. But we sort of talked about it, that those women then seem to disappear as they progress through their career. I'm proud to say I have worked in retail all my life. I have 2 children, and I have managed to manage my career around both. But it is fair to say I did move out of frontline retail management, probably for some of the points that were raised earlier in terms of the working hours, the mobility requirements, and also to progress my career. But there's definitely a recognition of the hours of work and how we can look at those going forward. But I think COVID really is the opportunity to change that. And I think retail is kind of probably the paradox to what people think. So there's a perceived lack of flexibility and an idea that senior managers work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. But the reality is retail doesn't. Retail is a 24/7 business. And in actual fact, even if you think of it from a customer experience, how many times you go into a shop at a late night or a weekend, and actually the experience isn't where you want it to be, and you ask for a manager and there isn't one. So retail actually has the opportunity to really make a step change and say we can be much more flexible in our approach. The other opportunity probably is part-time progression. We limit a lot of people's career opportunities, and Andrea talked about that earlier as well, in terms of there's lots of people want to work part-time, but there's lots of really good people want to work part-time. So why is it not possible? Why do we not trust these people? If they think that they can make it happen, let them do it. And another big opportunity, I think, as well is, and it's something that I actually have been doing some research on this week, is there's a lot of women leave working to have families, and they don't have the confidence to return. So we lose some really, really good people just because life has passed them by. So how do we sponsor those people? How do we look at return to work programs? And retail really has the opportunity to do that, because again, we can look at a huge variety of working hours, but we really should be looking at these people because they have a lot to bring. And then I think a big piece really needs to be intentionality in policy making. We've all kind of touched on it, that home life tends to land disproportionately on the mother. So we need to be much more positive in our approach around co-parenting, parental leave, and how do we really encourage people to do that. And positively within my own team of late, I have one of my team members has just had a baby, and he is now working part-time to enable his wife to work, and we've been able to support that. And even that, it's starting to remove the stigma of that. It's making that the norm and really encouraging people to work flexibly. I don't think it's as big an issue in within a head office, and I think it's important to call that out. I think it is more of a frontline retail problem. Within head office, we see lots of senior positions, but really whenever we get to the front line, how do we drive that forward? personally, within my own, company, I suppose it is worth calling out, 40% of our management team is now female. So Julia, similar to yourself, but again, and it's very, very similar to what Andrea said, when we go to store manager level, 21% of our managers are female. So we have more to do. One thing that we have, a couple of call outs from COVID is I think there's a huge move to output and not attendance. So, we need to take the focus off where people work and actually look at what do they do and how do we really hone in on that as well. And then really interestingly, we have just set up what we've called a Gen Rep board. And it's an inclusion and diversity board that works alongside our main board then, made up of a broad spectrum of colleagues and a lot of under 30s to represent the next generations coming through. And we're really using them to start to challenge, how do we do things differently? But I think, and it's similar probably to the conclusion that Andrea came to earlier, there's more to do in retail, especially at the front line.
Good. Eileen, have you seen any structural changes in policies and after the COVID or on the last few months, in order to address this issue of how differently impacted was the impact between genders and how that impacted gender equality?
Actually, it's not just for the pandemic effect, but in 2021, all employee leaders were given 15% diversity and inclusion targets in their performances. I believe the biggest impact should come from the leadership commitment. Since our CEO has signed United Nations Women's Empowerment Principles, we firmly believe that corporate leadership is a key and integral part of creating gender equality and women's empowerment. So we need to establish company-wide goals and targets for gender equality and women's empowerment, and measure through clear performance indicators. The second one, integrated HR systems should be in place. Your recruitment strategy should support your capability development programs, and you have to have a consolidated diversity and inclusion strategy on this. The last but not least, in supply chain, men and women leaders should support this agenda relentlessly. We still have a long way to go on this journey, but allyship is mandatory, and it all comes down with the gender partnership. And all powerful truths are based on the culture reset, whole cultural reset, not tick on the box programs.
Good. If I'm gonna do a final roundup, just a quick comment on each one of you, 1 minute comment. If you need to ask something or choose something for the future that will have the most impact possible on gender equality, what would that be? And it's a quick saying from you. So I'll start with Julia. Just 1 minute on that.
First, I'd like to thank for like 10 LinkedIn invites that I got in the meantime as after we started the conference. I think this is really good because all together we can really form and shape the power to move the gender equality to the next level. This last report that was saying about the staggering 257 years to close the gap, I personally believe we can do it faster if we act together. That is why we are forming these networks. That is why we are here to act together. So if I'm down to just a couple of sentences in terms of what is the ask, it starts with one. It's like in the name of this conference, it starts with one act. So when you complete, as a leader, as a department manager, as a store manager, when you complete a performance assessment, ask yourself how many female leaders have you rated exceptionally versus their male colleagues. When you are working on a raise for your employees, compare your male team member versus the female colleague, and really try to understand where is the pay gap and where is the pay difference. When you make a promotion decision, ask yourself, do you have any bias based on gender in terms of can this person cope with the role or cannot cope with the role just because of how they act or the natural style that they have. Ask yourself if you're fair in distributing the development efforts between male and female. And what is more important and the most important above all, just act on your findings. When you answer this question, you will have for sure something that you would like to act on. So just go and act on it.
Thanks a lot. Lisa, do you have a different request or?
I have all of that request. And also, I know we're tight for time, so 2 really quick ones for me. I think one, we have to, certainly in my experience, we have to change the message because in terms of education, equality is not just about fairness. You know, I think we have to change that message to it's just opening up a massive talent pool. And I think a lot of, particularly my male colleagues, assume it's just a fairness thing, you know, and it's not. It's about opening up and using a lot of different people with a lot of different skills and changes. And the other thing for me, I think Caroline mentioned as well, in senior leadership roles, we're gaining traction with females in senior leadership. And I think, you know, globally, we can feel that attraction and that draw, and you know, it's tangible, you know, the want to put women into senior leadership roles. But for us, in very male-dominated industries like ours, you know, we have less than 1% women across the plants in CHEP, you know, much less than 1%. It's, you know, can be counted on sort of on hands and fingers how many people we've got as are females. And for us, there's no pipeline. We need to prime the pipeline. You know, otherwise, getting women into the senior positions is always going to be an effort and always going to feel like an initiative. So just getting people in at all levels is just kind of my ask for the future. Good.
What about you, Eileen?
Actually, I want to highlight 3 items. It starts with leaders, tangible goals, make the ambitious real, and we need to change whole culture reset. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Caroline?
Yeah, mine's very simple as well, which is really to trust your colleagues to act, give them clarity of direction, and empower them. If someone comes with an idea, let them prove how it will work rather than starting with the norm of how it won't work. And I think that's really important for the likes of you know, flexible working requests and things. You know, try things, let them see if they can work. Most women then who are committed, they will make it, they'll make it work, and it can only help them to obviously drive you know, engagement, commitment, you know, going forward, and what can only help to drive to reduce the gender gap going forward.
Perfect. I'm going just 1 minute off script. I would like to have a request also. I think we didn't discuss that so much, but for me it's crucial also to have equality at home in order then to achieve equality at the professional level. So this is also a point to men in order to, and I think we have some men also in the audience, that gender equality for me will only be possible when we have also equality at home and in all the things we do at home with the kids, with the house, whatever. And it's really, really important that this is an effort not only from women but from men, and not only professional but personal also. So that's the way I see it. And I think if I would have my requests, that would be it. Also for women to allow this and for men to push this, both of them, would be significantly important for having equality at home in order to have equality professionally. So I would like to leave with this request. Okay. Thank you all. It was a great conversation. Especially myself, I love to hear all your experience. I love to hear it, and it was great. And thank you all for sharing. I'll pass to you, Paul.
Thank you, Joao. So, thank you, panelists, as well. Fantastic insights. Thank you for sharing and being so open. I just want to build on your final point, Joao. One of the questions came up with comments in the chat around a male colleague saying, "Thank God I don't have to do this all the time. Balance my home and work life." What, just like your partner has to? I'm thinking it was acceptable to say that, which at times blows me away. We need to challenge people's historical norms. particularly the men who think that they have it tough. As I say, great panel. We're going to take a short break now through to 1500. And then there's the opportunity to join the Inspire Me Talk series, where there's 10 speakers across 5 sessions. Really short, inspiring talks on a variety of different topics that really should, I hope, spark us to think differently about things, take a different lens to what's ahead of us. So if you can reconnect and join those, then that would be fantastic. And I just wrap by once again thanking Joao, the panelists, for